What's going on, guys? Today we're going to be talking about the top 10 free agents going into 2024 and where I think they'll land. Number 1, the biggest free agent, Chris Jones. Now, Chris Jones had that holdout in the beginning of the year where he is on the 1-year contract, and I fully think it depends how the Chiefs do this year. I could see him going back to Kansas City as the most realistic option, but Kansas City is in a tough spot with salary because they have another guy on this list who will be getting a big payday. So really, I could see him going to a team that needs to stop the run. And one team that we saw who needed to stop the run pretty bad last year was the Jacksonville Jaguars. And Trevor Lawrence is still on his rookie contract deal. And really, we saw it in the Tennessee game where if they could have had someone to stop Derrick Henry from running up the middle, they could have been in the playoffs. And at number 2, we have Josh Allen of the Jacksonville Jaguars, who just had a career year, having an amazing year with 17.5 sacks. But I think Jacksonville will keep him up because this team would not be as good or have a shot at getting into the playoffs in Week 18 like they did without Josh Allen, of course, of the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I really think that it would be hard to maintain this. But next up, we have another defensive tackle, Christian Wilkins. Now, the Dolphins are in a very interesting situation because Tua is going into a contract year where the Dolphins will probably pick up his 5th-year option, where he will just be able to have another year to play. You aren't on the biggest contract with Tua yet, so you're going to have to go all in right now or try and get a different quarterback, go a different route at quarterback. Next up, Anton Winfield Jr. This guy's a playmaker. He can make all sorts of plays for this Buccaneers team, and I think he will stick with the Buccaneers just because they have the quarterback on a lower scale deal, but Baker Mayfield is set to get a bigger payday after bringing them to the playoffs. But you have to think, a 25-year-old safety, you can't get away from him with how good he is. You have a guy that you have multiple years in with him, and if Tampa wants to make a push, they're going to need a guy like that. The next Kansas City Chief that I was talking about is L'Jarius Sneed. He has been a shut-down cornerback, and I think the Chiefs will try to retain him more than Chris Jones just because of age and position-wise, that a cornerback is probably more important than a defensive tackle, especially the way that he played. Not trying to say anything about defensive tackles. They are a very important position to gain pressure to the quarterback, which ultimately does help L'Jarius Sneed with having to coverage for less time. But I think that you have to know that he is probably going to be in the league longer than him. It's going to be one or the other with him, so I think he'll stay with the Chiefs, and Chris Jones will go to a different defensive tackle team like the Dolphins or the Jaguars. Next up, we have T. Higgins. Now, with the Panthers hiring the offensive coordinator, I think it's very likely he goes to Carolina. And one good thing with Carolina is if he would go to Carolina, Bryce Young gets help. You don't really have the highest draft picks this year, but you do have a good chance to make more plays when you don't have Adam Thielen as your wide receiver 1 if he sticks around for another year or just decides to retire. Next up, we have Danielle Hunter with 16.5 sacks. Any team would want him. And really, a team that wants quarterback pressure who just can't get to the quarterback. You're trying to get to the quarterback is the main goal of this. And what you're going to try and do is I could see him sticking with the Vikings most likely, or going to a team that needs pressure, that has a rookie quarterback. I mean, I'm kind of thinking if Jonathan Greener does not stick with the Texans could try and put a more veteran player to pair up with Will Anderson Jr. It could be pretty deadly, so I think he'll either go to the Texans or stick with the Vikings. Next up, we have Mike Evans, a 30-year-old receiver who has so many 1,000-yard seasons. I think, I'm not trying to be Buffalo Bills fan really here, but I think there's a good chance he goes to Buffalo. Buffalo needs a solid wide receiver number 2. Gabe Davis is in free agency. He is not a top 10 player in free agency. So I think if they let him go, you want a real wide receiver 2, there is a good chance that you would go out and get a Mike Evans, go up and get it type of guy. And really, I think he would be very good for this team. Next up, Justin Madabuk, defensive tackle for the Ravens. The only hard thing is how many good players the Ravens have on defense and offense trying to retain them all. You saw Lamar Jackson's huge contract. So you have to think, how long can you keep up this championship caliber team with guys like him? And I think he could go to Jacksonville or the Dolphins, teams that need to be able to stop their run more frequently and can't do that. So if you really want that to happen, you're just going to need to go out and get a guy who can do it. And that's going to be it for this video. I hope you liked this video. If you do, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.